Former Vice President Joe Biden has just responded to an article by a former Nevada state lawmaker. Assemblywoman Lucy Flores says before a campaign event in 2014, the vice president stood behind her backstage, smelled her hair, kissed the back of her head. Flores writes that made her feel, quote, uneasy, gross, and confused, unquote. In a statement out just moments ago, the former vice president says he's given countless handshakes and hugs on the campaign trail, quote, and quote, not once, never did I believe I acted inappropriately. If it is suggested I did so, I will listen respectfully, but it was never my intention, unquote. Joining me now is former Nevada state lawmaker Lucy Flores. Assemblywoman Flores, thanks so much for joining us. Let's go back to that day in November 2014. The Vice President Biden has come to Nevada for a campaign event. You're running for lieutenant governor. You're both backstage, waiting to go on stage. What happened next?
Well, it happened also suddenly. Anyone who's ever been at a rally recognizes that there is just chaos. There's a lot of energy, that everyone's running back and forth. Eva Longoria was there. We were all lined up next to the stage. Eva was in front of me. Joe Biden was behind me. I'm kind of preparing myself to give these remarks. It's the very last days before the election. And very unexpectedly and out of nowhere, I feel Joe Biden put his hands on my shoulders, get up very close to me from behind, lean in, smell my hair, and then plant a slow kiss on the top of my head. And that in and of itself might not sound like it's a very serious thing. That in and of itself might sound like it was innocent and well-intentioned. But in the context of it, as a person that had absolutely no relationship with him afterwards, as a candidate who was preparing to make my case for why I should be elected the second in command of that state, to have the vice president of the United States do that to me so unexpectedly and just kind of out of nowhere, it was just shocking. It was shocking because you don't expect that kind of intimate behavior. You don't expect that kind of intimacy from someone so powerful and someone who you just have no relationship whatsoever to touch you and to feel you and to be so close to you in that way. So I frankly just didn't even know how to react. I was just shocked. I felt powerless. I felt like I couldn't move. I just didn't even know how to process it. And my bigger point that I've been making is that in these power dynamic situations, and women are subjected to this in the political setting, but in work settings all the time, that you just kind of process it and then you move on because you have a job to do. And frankly, what do you say? Who do you tell? There just isn't really a mechanism to deal with it. And so that's what I did. I went on and I made my case and campaigned and frankly then went on with my life because, again, what do you do?
So Vice President Biden and his team just released a statement just moments ago from Mr. Biden. Here's what it says, quote, in my many years on the campaign trail and in public life, I have offered countless handshakes, hugs, expressions of affection, support, and comfort, and not once, never did I believe I acted inappropriately. If it is suggested I did so, I will listen respectfully, but it was never my intention. We have arrived at an important time when women feel they can and should relate their experiences, and men should pay attention, and I will, unquote. What's your response?
Well, I certainly think that it's better than his first statement that they released on Saturday. I'm glad that he's willing to listen. I'm glad that he is clarifying his intentions. Frankly, my point was never about his intentions, and they shouldn't be about his intentions. It should be about the women on the receiving end of that behavior. And this isn't the first time, and it wasn't the only incident where he was acting inappropriately with women. If he is saying that he never believed that that was inappropriate, then frankly, I think that's a little bit of a disconnect and not being aware, a very sense of not being aware, because there has been documentation, both in photos, videos, stories that were written. Now, that being said, I think that part of the reason why I decided to finally say something is because those behaviors were not being taken very seriously. They were not being considered from the perspective of the woman on the other side of that power dynamic, on the side of on the receiving end. And I just can't imagine that there was never a situation where someone said to him, Vice President, Mr. Vice President, you probably should stop doing that. You should probably stop touching women in that way. You should probably keep your hands to yourself.
So, Assemblywoman Flores, you write in the piece that you wrote for The Cut that you know that people might accuse you of being politically motivated here. We should point out, you supported Bernie Sanders in 2016, running for president. He's running again. You attended a Beto O'Rourke campaign event yesterday. You've told us that you haven't endorsed any candidate yet. You haven't decided who you want to support. But how would you respond to somebody out there who says she's attending a Beto rally, she supported Bernie in 2016, politics might be at least partially motivating you here? What would you tell those people?
I would say politics was definitely the impetus. The reason why we're having these conversations about Vice President Joe Biden is because he's considering running for president. And frankly, the reason why I felt so compelled to finally say something was because over the years, as this behavior was documented, as it was frankly dismissed by the media and not taken seriously, that conversation was not coming up in the discussions about whether or not he would in a complete analysis of his history, of his record, as we go through the vetting process for all of these candidates, that important aspect was being left out, and it was being dismissed, and it wasn't being acknowledged. And for me, that was, one, incredibly offensive, and two, I think really speaks to the fact that when behavior isn't considered quote unquote serious enough for society, for America, it's very easy to dismiss it. You know, I fully recognize that this behavior, never do I claim that that rises to the level of a sexual assault or anything of that nature. What I am saying is that it's completely inappropriate, that it does not belong in any kind of a professional setting, much less in politics, and that is something that we should consider when we are talking about the background of a person who is considering running for president.